Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and welcome back. Just prior to our short interval, we were talking about a few questions or one particular question which came in about Asr Salah, but also a question which came in after that which was about making or listening to slanderous comments. That gave me an opportunity to explore the whole concept of a major sin and a minor sin and really focus in on the minor sins, how we see them as tiny little grains of sand, whereas the Sahaba and the pious predecessors used to see them as mountains. And this is something that's very important for us to understand. We're not taking any calls today, so please don't phone 01274 214 299. I said it feels strange because normally I ask you to call, but this time I'm not asking you to call. So please don't call that number, but you can still email on q&a@iqra.tv. That's q&a@iqra.tv, and we'll be able to take those questions, inshallah, and answer them when we see you again in our next live session. So don't panic, don't worry about it. We'll still can deal with those issues. And this is the beauty of having an email system, because that is open 24/7. And alhamdulillah, we're nearly 24/7. As I mentioned in the first interval, Al Khair Foundation and Iqra TV have ensured that they provide you a Q&A service virtually, all day. So, if you ring during the office hours on 01274 214283, you will be able to access ulama, ask them questions and be given an answer. But not only via the phone, if you're lucky enough to live in Bradford, because I know only the lucky people are chosen to live in Bradford. If you're lucky enough to live in Bradford, you can actually pop in to our offices on Manchester Road. I always forget the number. I think it's 918 Manchester Road, but I might be wrong. I'm sure Adil will correct me. Oh yeah, that's it. I was correct. So 918 Manchester Road. 918, yep, 980, yeah. But normally you don't look at door numbers when you're going up Manchester Road because you're going up too quick. So the best way to remember is just as you come off the M606 and you take the, I've forgotten the name of the road that goes past the Matland and Morrison's, then we are just there at the top of the road. You can't miss us. Al Khair Foundation, Iqra TV. You can pop in, alhamdulillah, with your queries, if there's counseling you're after, and also you have the opportunity when you're in the studio or you're in Al Khair's offices to be also make a donation for something, because we come here, alhamdulillah, we utilize the services that Al Khair Foundation are putting out, but it's also good that, the world is, whenever a favor is done for you, whenever something is good is done for you, then you should continue that good and do good for somebody else. Don't let the good stop with you. So if you come into the offices and the ulama help you, they solve your issue, they give you some advice, they give you some words of encouragement, they answer your question, alhamdulillah, may Allah bless them, that they share their knowledge with you, they share their time with you, then you should also think that alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed me with some money, so I will give £5, £10, £20, £30 for this project, the other project, because with these offices, I've been able to go and have some ilms shared with me. So why don't I help those people who also need help? And that is these individuals, whether they're in Pakistan, Yemen, Rohingya, Bangladesh, India, Sham, Syria, Turkey, Philistine, wherever they are on the planet, you can also help them. They can't just drive up Manchester Road and visit us in these offices, but we can ensure that your sadaqah, your lillah, your zakah, and your donation reaches them. That we can, inshallah, as you see when the Al Khair charity projects are running on the Iqra TV, you'll see that the work that they're doing, and you'll see where your money is reaching. So that's the service that I spoke about. So alhamdulillah, that is now available here at the Bradford branch. So please utilize it and take advantage of it. Similarly, why don't you follow on one of our social media platforms? If you go to our Facebook page, Al Khair Foundation, you'll find lots of hadith being shared on a daily basis, the events which take place here in the offices. We had a Malaysian delegation a few days ago. Senior governors from across Malaysia came for some leadership training, and we had lectures from our ulama being delivered to them. So they were very interested, very keen as to the work that Al Khair and Iqra TV are doing. So there's events of that nature as well. So you'll find that on the Facebook page. But also we have a Twitter, and that is Bradford at Bradford Al Khair. You find it on there, so you can also follow that as well and see updates coming from this place. So alhamdulillah, many ways our message is getting out to you, and you need to continue to engage with that message. So we dealt with the numerous questions before the break. Let's see what other questions we have in store. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're well, Mufti Sahab. To my understanding, when it comes to inheritance in Islam, the male are to get double the sister's share. So for example, 5,000 for the sister and the brother receives 10,000. If a person then created a will whereby the daughter gets 1,000 and the son gets 14,000, or that they both receive half, is this permissible? Is the will ignored in this situation, and would the will maker be sinful? If you could spread some clarification on this, please. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I will try my best to spread some clarification on this matter. Absolutely correct that according to the Sharia, that when there is a sister and a brother, then there will be a division such that the brother will receive twice as much as the sister. Now, I have explained this previously as to what the rationale for that is. But let me explain it again in case some new members have joined and they've not heard it. Many folk, especially that come from the sort of equality angle, argue that it's not fair. Why is it that the female gets half the share of the male? Rather, the female should get the same share as the male. In fact, that would be unfair. So you might raise your eyebrow and think, how can it be unfair if the male gets equal to the female? Surely that's fair. Well, that would be fair if they both had equal responsibilities. They both don't have equal responsibilities. So for instance, whatever the male takes, he has to use that money because he is required to support his wife and his children. Whereas when the woman takes the money, the sister, she's not required to support her husband and her children. So let me give you an example. Let's just say there's a brother and a sister. The brother is married and he has 3 children, and the sister is married and she has 3 children. So they have the same size family. The father dies of this brother and sister, and therefore the boy receives a share of 10,000 and the sister receives a share of 5,000. So the woman is getting half the share of the male. But the male has to share that money with his wife and his children. So in reality, he's getting 2,000, because 2,000 is going to be spent on the wife, 2,000 on one child, 2,000 on the other child, and 2,000 on the other child. So he's left with 2,000 that is going to be spent on him. The sister, on the other hand, is not required to spend any money on her husband or children, so she keeps the 5,000. So who's ended up with more? So whenever we look at these things, we need to ensure we see it completely, fully, from all angles, rather than looking at it from the perspective of what a person receives without taking into consideration the responsibilities that person has upon them. So, yes, if a person did not share it according to the will, so either gave the daughter considerably less than half or gave them equal, then that would be against the will of Allah, and the will itself would be flawed and impermissible. If the will was allowed to go ahead, then and whoever pushed it ahead would be considered as sinful. Rather, even if the father has made that will, it should be rectified by the recipients of the inheritance, and they should say, well, I know my father wanted me to have this, but I would rather he was not punished in the hereafter, so therefore I will only take what the Sharia allows me to take, and the rest obviously will be shared accordingly. That is the sound way to do so. Let's see the next question. Salams. What's the ruling on a man refusing to pay the maintenance to his wife during the iddah period? Also, what is the ruling of man refusing to return gold to his ex-wife? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Firstly, my brother, we do not direct questions to ulama directly, personally. Secondly, we do not have this scholar's name you've used on this group, and he doesn't, A, is not on the group, and B, he does not answer questions on this group. It seems to me that this is a personal issue that you are raising towards him. But I will leave that matter, as I do not know the facts, and I will answer the question. So the ruling on a man refusing to pay maintenance is obviously during the iddah period is that he is sinful. But it also depends on what has happened, whether, for instance, the woman has decided not to stay with him and she has not to stay in the house in which is the marital home, and she's left that home and has decided to go elsewhere, and then she's now charging her husband. So there needs to be, that matter needs to be explored in more detail. What is the ruling man refusing to return gold to his ex-wife? I'm not sure. It depends on who owns the gold. If the gold is owned by the ex-wife, then obviously it's her wealth and it should be returned to her. If it is not, then it shouldn't be returned. So the more I read this and the way the question has been posed, I see that this is actually a matter of dispute between the couple, and this is not resolved by answering a question on this type of forum, but rather this needs to be taken to a qadi that both the wife and the husband accept, and then he would try to resolve this in an as amicable fashion as possible, if that is at all possible. That I cannot answer. Next question. Assalamu alaikum. If a Muslim openly states that they do not want Sharia to govern them from a high level perspective, such as governments, countries, etc., would that take the person out of the fold of Islam? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is our tradition amongst our ulama that they try their very utmost to be as inclusive as possible when it comes to those people who declare themselves to be Muslims. So the ulama will say, be as inclusive as possible, unless obviously that person is making clear statements against the fundamentals of Islam. If somebody is making clear statements against the fundamentals of Islam, then without doubt that person is out of the fold of Islam. But if a person has made ambiguous comments about the fundamentals of Islam, then that would need to be explored further. That what did you mean by this? Because you will give the person the benefit of the doubt to say that it's an ambiguous statement and he did not mean by this statement that I do not believe in Allah or His Prophet ﷺ. So therefore we will give him the benefit of the doubt. If we wish to explore it, then we would question him to say, what did you mean by I do not want to live under the Sharia, or I do not want to live under a Sharia country? What did you mean by that? Are you basing that? Because it could be, for instance, you could be going by that, thinking that certain Muslim countries are Sharia countries and he does not like the way they're run, so he thinks I wouldn't want to live under that. We don't know. Or he could mean A, or he could mean B, or he could mean C. So until we do not, guess, we do not presume, we do not suspect on matters of belief, we allow the person to state unequivocally what they mean by it and then make a decision. Two more questions before we end today's session, and we look forward to meeting again next time. If a latecomer joins at the start of a second rak'ah of a silent prayer, should they recite the thana then or when they get up to make up their missed rak'ah? Would the ruling be any different if they joined a non-silent prayer? If a person who joins the prayer late, a masbuq, joins in the second rak'ah, obviously has not performed the first rak'ah, should they recite the thana then, or when they make up the missed rak'ah? Well, according to them now, this is their first rak'ah, yani first rak'ah fi'lan, but qira'atan, obviously it is a second rak'ah, because the imam will recite a surah. And then when he goes into he will sit then after that rak'ah. So he will make the thana up in the first rak'ah when he repeats that at the beginning, because he's already missed the first rak'ah in totality. There's no difference between a silent prayer and an audible prayer. The only difference we see is that if he joins in the first rak'ah. If he joins in the first rak'ah, he can pray thana. But if it's an audible prayer and the imam has already started Surah Fatiha, then he cannot pray thana. So that's the only distinction you can draw between the two. Assalamu alaikum. I did an obligatory ghusl but forgot to rinse my mouth and nose and remembered when I wiped my whole body with a towel, and so then immediately I rinsed my mouth and nose. Is ghusl valid? Okay. So, if a person has done all the actions, all what is required of an obligatory ghusl, but has not washed the mouth and nose, but then remembers and does them after, then the ghusl is valid. Okay, the ghusl is valid. They do not need to repeat the full ghusl. Oh, he didn't press save. So, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, in answer to this question, that if a person does an obligatory ghusl, but he forgets to rinse the mouth and nose, however, remembers to do them afterwards, immediately after he's wiping his body down or drying his body down with a towel, then yes, and he rinses his mouth and nose properly to the back of the throat and to the soft part of the nose, then ghusl is valid. So that, my brothers and sisters, gets us to the end of all the questions on the both groups, both the gents and the ladies. Alhamdulillah, with a few minutes to spare, we won't have a chance to dip into our questions that have come via email, but don't fret, don't panic. We will deal with those questions, inshallah, on our next live session. And when we deal with them in our next live session, you will get answers to all of those. Just to remind you, in case you're wondering what our email address is, if it is not memorized by now, why isn't it? The email address is q&a@iqra.tv. That's q&a@iqra.tv. That is where you can send your questions. They'll stay in there nice and safe. And the next time we come on live, we will dip into them and answer the questions from there. So, alhamdulillah, a very productive and detailed session that we've had today. Lots of questions, different types of questions, and hopefully certain questions which have been food for thought to get you thinking about certain methods, certain processes, and also get you to kind of, because questions lead and answers lead to more questions. That is the beauty of ilm. You know, alhamdulillah, I've been very fortunate that I've been learning for, all my life, alhamdulillah. And yet, still, I don't have all the answers. There are still things which come inside my head and I think, goodness me, I wonder what the answer to that is. And now off I go, searching for the answer. Nowadays, a lot quicker because obviously we have access to lots of books, lots of resources, lots of experts, just a click away, where we can go and check and read the answer. Whereas before, you had to go to a library, and if you went to your local library and they didn't have those particular books, you had to go to the central library. And if you went to the central library and they didn't have those sort of books, you'd have to go to a university library. And if they didn't have those sort of books, you'd have to go to the British Lending Library. So, you would spend a long time traveling and going, trying to get that information. Now, literally, fingertip away. You got access to journals, you got access to books, PDF galore. So you are not short. So, but unfortunately, with all this information, there is no appetite amongst us to learn. So, these Q&A sessions, these questions, these answers, they should be increasing your appetite for more ilm, increasing your appetite for more knowledge, increasing your appetite to want to know more. Because when you know more, worshipping Allah becomes a lot easier. When you know more, following the religion of Islam becomes easier. When you know more, your iman becomes stronger and it becomes more fortified and it gives you that comfort. So jazakumullah khairan for watching. We look forward to seeing you again shortly. As I said, you've got so many ways, so many avenues to keep in touch, so please do so. Don't feel that we are far away. We are literally only a phone call away. So I look forward to seeing you, inshallah. I pray today's session was of benefit to all. Ameen. It suffices now for me to say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.